Oh, okay, it's about 8:31, and we're going to get started with week 6 of Introduction to Corrections. And I'm going to go over uh, the assignments, and then I'm going to discuss a few things, and then we're going to adjourn. Okay, so let's go ahead and share my screen. Okay, first thing you need to be aware of is your assignments for this week. You have 3 issues in male prisons today. Make sure you look at the rubric that I sent you. It's also on the home page. You'll lose 5 points for not satisfying the APA requirements. A lot of people who have submitted assignments already have failed to provide citations in the body. APA requires both. That's a given already that we've been sharing since the beginning of the quarter. And also make sure you have the right number of pages. The Stanford Prison experience also tells you the same thing. You have points for providing answers to these questions, then you can lose 5 points again for failure to do APA. So you've got to make sure that you do that, okay? Very, very, very important. And then there's a reminder of our lecture today. We got 2 more lectures to go, week 8 and week 10. I have week 3, which took the place of week 2, and then week 4. So we got coming up today, week 6. You'll see that here, and as well as I'll be emailing it to you. So now let's take a look at the announcement for this week. Module 6, the prison experience, male versus female. And to prepare for this, you read sections 6, 8, and 11 of the text. And classification, myth versus fact, and some thoughts from a prison lieutenant. I'm going to conclude with providing that to you. Again, I try to do the recording of the video. If it doesn't come through very clear, then make sure that you look at it yourself. Your discussion assignment, issues unique to female inmates. You guys have provided some good posts. Initial post was due yesterday at 11:59 p.m. and reply posts are due Saturday by 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time. And then you have 2 written assignments. Make sure you have cover sheets, 3 issues in male prisons today, and Stanford Prison Experience. Each are due this Sunday by 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time. I have been catching up on I am caught up and actually ahead in my grading, so I have graded all the ones that you've submitted already. And again, I point out that many of you have not done the citations and references there, but you make sure you do both of them in terms of your written assignments, okay? You can, by the way, still submit if you got your grade early and you didn't submit the citations. You can still do it before the due date, and then it could bring your grade up. So that's something I forgot to tell you. Some students don't want to go back and do it again, but that's up to you. You know, to me, it would change my grade from a lower grade to a high grade. So it's all up to you whether or not how you want to operate on that basis. Let's take a look at the course calendar. Okay, we had some issues with the course calendar. Something happened when they did some changing in the system, but I went back and fixed it up. Your reading assignment I just gave you, again, you click on that. It tells you what to read. and then your initial post, and then your lecture, your reply post, then your two written assignments that I've already talked about. The reissues in prison today, along with the that's the same one twice, along with the Stanford Prison Experience. There was a really good movie that was done with that. I think HBO did that, or whoever. It was a good experience to see, and if you had a chance to see that, you might have learned some stuff as well. But do follow through with that written assignment, okay? Let's go now and look at the module itself. Again, these are the assignments. Notice that the reissues is a 2-page paper. I've already told you the requirements, and these are the issues that you're going to deal with. 2 pages now. Run your papers through Grammarly. I remind you again to check. Some of you get caught with Grammarly and some don't. Your prison experiment as well tells you where you can find that. Hit this link, and then you'll find the information that you need to answer these 4 questions. Make sure you have citations in the bodies and references at the end, and then your discussion post. Okay. So now let's go to the assignment, the lesson content, where we'll finish up here. Again, reminding you of the reading, and then the section on classification, myth versus fact, and then thoughts from a prison lieutenant, and then 3 issues, and then the Stanford. Make sure you conduct research, not for the Stanford, you can, but primarily for this written assignment, 3 issues in male prison today. Don't just rely on the textbook, because you'll lose points. Okay, and then your discussion post. We've already gone over the requirements for that. So let's talk about classification. You should be aware of the fact that it depends on the kind of offender that is arrested and then subsequently convicted or pled guilty. It says offenders entering prison participate in orientation, where you're introduced to what the requirements are, what the expectations are for the facility, and then depending on the kind of crime or risk level, you are classified. Institutions also classify based on risk level, and we're going to talk about that in a few minutes. Also, many individual case plans can impact the decision as to where an inmate is placed. So if a person needs drugs and alcohol treatment, or education is something that can help them, or job skill training, that will determine what kind of facility that you end up going to. I would say the more serious the offense, the more likely that you would not be in a facility where you can get these treatments. Inmates once incarcerated experienced a cultural change. It says they were socialized in the inmate code, known as prisonization. They take on the customs and norms of the culture. They started learning how they spoke, and even joined in gangs to survive in the prison, and participated in many illicit activities. Among these activities were they would try to deal with getting contraband in, and weapons, drugs, alcohol, clothing that wasn't allowed. Also, you should be aware that if a person committed a certain offense, for example, if an individual was a pedophile, they would have to be segregated because they were open to attack from other inmates. There's the culture of many prisons excludes pedophiles. They usually feed upon them, and this is coming up here where it says sex and violence. Although sexual victimization in prison is less pervasive than originally thought, but it does occur to the point. and it's a serious issue that the President Bush signed the Prison Rape Elimination Act, which didn't eliminate it, but it provides training inmate and staff. On the other hand, violence is still taking place for a number of reasons. You have overcrowdedness, you have the various gangs and things of that nature. So, and then there are inmate assaults on staff and each other as well. So it's part of the challenge of a correction officer, and we'll deal with the classification of those individuals as well. Now, in women prisons, the female population is increasing. People will be surprised. Females are more likely than males to be convicted of nonviolent and incarcerated in more passive roles, such as drug crimes, and hasn't contributed. You should be aware of the fact that many women who end up going to prison go to prison because of some man. And it is because the man will use them or either abuse them in a domestic violence situation, and it'll take the matter in their own hands. The fact of the matter is that usually women don't go to prison without that. There are some exceptions, but most of the time, and the reason the numbers are increasing is because of what I just said. Some unique issues related to women are that there's fewer prisons, so there's a lot of overcrowdedness. So, and then they're away from their family, their friends, their children, and the whole thing. So one of the peculiar issues that women face is motherhood is important, and it creates depression within women, mental health issues, physical health issues, and there are programs that are needed to watch out. There's a higher rate of suicide among females, particularly those who have children. Sexual abuse continues from the instance that guards or correction officers take advantage of these females because it's their word against them, and oftentimes that is one of the issues that they face as a female. And so we continue to move forward in terms of trying to professionalize the jails. So now let's fix this for a minute here. Okay. As soon as I get that done, there we go. So we're going to go through this little scenario, and we're going to deal with some of these things. And we're going to deal with some things that are myth and some that are fact. So inmates easily adjust to prison life. And there's a myth. And a lot of people think that, and you type in what you think, so I'm not going to type anything in, but a lot of people think that inmates adjust easily to prison life, but that is not necessarily true. And you will find that it's a difficult thing because you take away the freedom of individuals, you move them away from their families, they're in a regimented program situation, they're subjected to isolation sometimes and subjected to dangers that they wouldn't be subjected to if they were not incarcerated. So depression and difficulties are common as prisonization occurs. So it is not easy, and that's one of the things that you should be aware of. Prisons are controlled and inmates closely monitored. Well, there is a movement toward that. There's an attempt, and the desire and plan is to do so. However, because of the overcrowdedness and also the budgetary issues with hiring the adequate number of officials, correction officers is present, it does create a problem in terms of achieving that. So as a result, gangs control the prisons and not the correctional staff. That's a major, major problem because of, the inadequate numbers of correction officers. Contraband is rare. That is definitely not true. Drugs, alcohol, gambling, and other unauthorized materials are common in all prisons. That's a common fact. Most inmates are sexually assaulted, particularly when new to an institution. I think the answer to that is something that takes place, but according to this, it says it's less prevalent than previously believed. The fact of the matter is because people that are new are tested to see how they are. However, the point of the matter is that they have decided to segregate, like I said again, the sex offenders, particularly pedophiles, right away, because otherwise they're fair game for sexual assault. Due to tight control, assaults are rare. Not true. Inmates commit more than 16,000 annual assaults against staff, inmates on inmate, so it's an ongoing problem. And again, it gets back to the issue of what I said. There are good trained people, better trained people now being hired, and that, as a matter of fact, there's a movement towards now hiring college graduates as opposed to just high school graduates. So they want a more professional individual in those positions. The point of the matter is that, again, because of the budgetary constraints and the overcrowdedness that exists, it still continues to be not a rare occurrence, but a frequent occurrence. Prison guards enjoy their power and fight rehabilitation efforts. That is something that is not necessarily because, as I said earlier, correction officers are educated and highly trained and more favor rehabilitation and don't hold animosity toward inmates. They want to help people for the most part. That's the goal of most correction officers, prison guards, whatever you want to call them, that they want to try to turn that person into a law-abiding citizen, send them in a whole nother direction rather than becoming recidivists and going out after they're released and committing more crimes. Women are seldom sent to prison. I already addressed that. Gender-neutral sentencing reforms have placed more women behind bars, and I explained to you why that's occurring. Female inmates from quasi-family units in prison include same-sex relationships. Today, females tend to mistrust more and avoid forming close relationship with other inmates. They're leery of them because they will use them to take advantage of them. So it is something that's slowly evolving because the concern and care about watching out for themselves. The majority of female inmates are young and unattached. That is not true. Approximately 60% of all females are mothers. So again, that's a high population. That's over half, and that is a serious issue. But I already told you that usually the situation occurs where those females are separated from their children because of some act that involved a man or something to provide support for their children. But it is a continuing activity, and so yes, they have children, and it does create problems, as I said earlier, such as an increased number of suicide and other types of activities that are detrimental to those female inmates. And that's the end of of that exercise. Okay. So now let's go down to there's some thoughts from a prison lieutenant. Again, I'm going to try to get this in. Okay, and it's about 7 minutes, so I'm going to remove my hit.
Minnesota Corrections Facility in St. Cloud, which is an intake facility for the whole department of Minnesota. I've been at the department for 28 years. I started as a corrections officer, going to corrections sergeant, and now my current position, corrections lieutenant. I'm also the team leader for the special operations response team, and I also do a lot of training in that area.
So what do you need to be a corrections officer? What are the minimum requirements?
GED or high school diploma. You apply online, and then they set up the testing. The test consists of a writing component and a video component. If you pass that test, you have an oral interview, a series of questions that they all get scored. And if you pass that, then all candidates pass that will fill out a form for criminal background check, predatory offender check, and a criminal history check. So then they'll start doing that. If you pass all those, then you'll get offered a job. You got a list to get offered a job. You need to be, can't be incarcerated within the past year, and if you were, you need to provide documentation that you're supervised or release. That's been completed.
Okay, so you do not need a 2-year degree or any experience. High school is sufficient.
Yes.
Okay.
And then if you get hired, you'll have to pass a physical exam. There'll be drug testing, TB testing, and then once you pass all that, you do 6 weeks of academy, and then first year employment is probation.
Okay, so lots of training that goes on-the-job training that goes along with this.
Yeah, that's the majority of that first 6 weeks is on the job, and after that, you start off a lot of job shadowing stuff.
Okay, so if I were hired as a correctional officer, a typical day, or what would my day look like?
Well, you're driving to work, pick up your radio, your keys, you put on everybody has to wear your utility bill, minimum cups, chemical irritants, you report to your post. You could work anywhere from the living unit to the secure control center to supervising the offender crew. There's a lot of different posts for officers. The average day has a lot of observation and can seem to be boring at times, but that escalates to very dangerous and wild times in a split second. A lot of our situations are just dealing with officer presence, communication skills, verbal directives. We can make their compliance that way. That doesn't work. You go to the force continuum all the way up to hands-on, chemical irritants, intermediate weapons, whatever it might be. And it's not common. We have fights quite regular. Deal with a lot of incompatibility issues and people getting restored. It's just ongoing.
Okay, so you mentioned that you were the intake facility. So do you classify inmates? Can you talk about that and what level of security is this institution?
The security levels for the institutions go 1 through 5, with 1 being the minimum by max. They determine the facility's security levels with operational needs and structural needs. For instance, the level 4 has requirements for mandatory armed outside patrol, or you might have secure perimeter mandates for armed officers on the wall, things like that. So once you designate facilities, when they come to our facility, they're seen right in the intake area, they're fingerprinted, they're asked a series of questions, they take pictures of the had to do is see health service right away, and then they're brought into the intake unit, which is an area I supervise. They spend about 30 days and then they go through orientation. First full day they're there, and then they're seen by health service, psychology, alcohol, drug assessment, medication testing, a lot of things going on to help their classification. Within the 14 days, first 14 days, the case manager should enter data relevant to their classification score. And their classification score is a number. It's the factors of your current criminal conviction, what that is, your past criminal history in the last 10 years, your behavior in prison in the last 5 years, and then there are lots of the classification. For instance, if you have played without parole, you cannot go home level 5, but what? So it matter any other factors. So when was it 28 to 45 days classification officer and your team meeting, they give you a score and that'll determine your classification. And at that point, we'll decide by classification, treatment needs, and there's a number of factors what facility you need to move to. And then we'll transfer from there. And it's not uncommon for us to get 40 offenders in a day, we'll 40 out. So it's very busy.
So the intake part doesn't happen in a day or two. It actually takes a few weeks.
Yeah, when they come in the ELs, they probably spend approximately the first 30 days in the intake unit, and then they move to the next unit. Sometimes they can transfer right from that house. Probably in about 3 weeks, they're done with most of their intake needs, all their assessments and testing and stuff like that.
We talked about a lot of things that a correctional officer might do. And in our text, we've talked a lot about professionalism and issues related to just being healthy as someone who works in this field. What contributes to correctional officer professionalism?
Well, you're supposed to treat everybody with respect, be courteous, and give respect, get respect. People that seem to be successful in this career have the ability to deal with the stress that we have in a center environment. They have a way to deal with it away from work also. They tend to take the high road in tough situations.
Do you have advice for students today who are interested in going into this field?
Yeah, most people that are good corrections officers are good observers, they're good communicators, they have good de-escalation skills. I mean, these people are incarcerated, but they are human beings, and you treat them as such. As long as that's what they command at the time, if they escalate beyond that, that's another situation. Most of the people that are most successful, and like I said, there are a lot of rewards as far as dealing with people. Sometimes you can make a difference in situations. But keep in mind, we go from, can be very boring and get complacent to very exciting in a split second. So you see a lot of different things around here. Really, no seems dull, there never is a dull moment around here.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so you can see that what was stated here makes it pretty clear that a lot of the things we talked about earlier. Now, one of the things that he said was high school. Now, again, I caution you not to say, oh, well, am I wasting my time in college? No, you're not, because there is a movement towards more professional correction officers. And I have a number of students, particularly one who helps me a lot and has helped students that I asked her to help. She has gone from a correction officer all the way up to major, which is the highest position you can hold. And she has her bachelor's, and she continues to climb even higher. She's been placed the head of a special agency that was just instituted for drug treatment in our jurisdiction here in Will County, related to Stateville Prison, which is in Will County also. And so the key is to continue with your education so that you can climb up the ranks and make more money and begin to not just be a correction officer, but a officer. You have responsibilities that are increasing, of course, but it's the goal of most students to grow in their jobs to supervisory capacities. I also note to you that transferable skills, they were referred to during the time of his interview as well, that we've talked about communication, the ability to de-escalate, professionalism, you have to operate ethically, so the bottom line is that all these opportunities are open for you, so you want to continue to move forward in your education. And I've covered everything that I have for today. There will not be a lecture next week. That's week 7. We have 2 more, week 8 and week 10. So I am going to end this meeting and send out this recording.